Welcome back, everybody. I'm not going to clap my controllers this time. Anyway, it's been a hot minute since I've made an actual VRChat optimization guide, but most likely you get into the game and this is you. And you're like, oh, I can't fucking live anymore. So let's fix that. So, first things first, actually, we're going to go over Steam VR settings, because you can get quite a bit of performance from this, and it's quick, it's easy. So we're just going to go to Steam VR. I know, so two things for people who've been in my, or watched my last video. I'm not wearing all my full body, sorry about that. And also, that GPU, I downgraded, because this thing only uses 90 watts. And in the summertime, whew, that's way better than 450. Anyway. It's less than half as powerful, but I'm still able to get some pretty serious FPS out of this thing. It's a 4060 for people who are wondering. Anyway, so right now we're going to go to settings. If you're running index, so I have some new updated information for y'all. Basically, on index, 144, I was wrong, I admit that. But for 120, basically what you have is the best visual quality, because the same thing that the big screen uses for, I do all these unscripted, by the way, just FYI, I just fucking DisplayPort upscaling, there we go. So the same thing that big screen uses to get from 72 to 90 hertz is the same way that index is using to get from 120 to 144. So you do have a slight visual quality loss. That's why I run on 120. You don't have to if you don't want to. You can run it at whatever you want. I just prefer 120 just because I feel like it looks better. Anyway, brightness, you can change that however you'd like. From everything that I've experienced since the newer updates and everything, basically the easiest thing to do is just slide everything to the left. And for people who are on lower end systems, just set it to like 100%. Alright, so set that to 100% if you're running a lower end rig. You can lower it a bit more if you want. But yeah, make sure you have the... let's see if I can get under here. The advanced settings, show those, because otherwise you won't see any of that. Now the only other thing we have to do in here is go to video. All that's the same. So same thing as before, everything to the left. It's wicked easy. You don't have to think about it. Just basically put everything on the left. Overlay render quality. I recommend medium if you're running anything higher end, like something that's going to be more than 2K per eye, like the Quest 3. Maybe you want to have that on high, or Vive Pro 2, or big screen, or basically anything, you know, past index. But on index, you really don't need it, and it does kind of eat a little bit of your frames. Well, now that we're done with Steam VR, it's time that we move on to the VRChat settings. So this is something you all are very familiar with, I'm sure, the shield menu. You can set this up to however you'd like. Just be aware that audio is not their voice. So don't just turn on audio for people. There are still audio crashers out there. I just do voice and avatar for everybody. Let's go to your avatar culling here. Set that to whatever you think you can handle. From what I've experienced, basically just scroll down until you see avatar optimizations. Depending on your internet speed and how fast you want your game to run, I would really not recommend setting this much above 100, and you can always manually show somebody, and then it overrides this limit anyway. It just keeps you from loading into lobbies with people who have not optimized their avatar at all. Like this avatar that I'm in right now is like 30 megabytes. I promise you, like most people will not be over this limit. But I think VRChat starts you off at 200, which for a lot of systems is too much. All right, so next thing down here, avatar culling. One of the biggest things that I've realized is it actually has to do more with your RAM, which is up here. So I've actually been able to go to worlds that have like 150 people in it, but I can't show everybody because it starts filling up my RAM. If you have more RAM, you can show more people. It doesn't seem to matter as much these days with the new updates, whether it's VRAM or not. I'm sure it does for textures, but when you're talking about culling and like seeing things in the game, the more RAM, the better, because your frame rate will stay higher. So 32 min is what I'd recommend these days, 32 gigabytes minimum. If you can get your hands on 64, great. You shouldn't need more than 64 for this game, I don't believe. Maybe in the future, 128 will be, you know, the new min in a couple years, but as for right now, 32 is really where you want to be. As for the culling, Try to keep this around the same amount of avatars as you have per gigabytes of VRAM. However much free RAM you have. So like, let's do a calculation real quick. So I have 8 gigs of VRAM. And I have about 20 gigs of normal RAM. So each one of these, you can have one avatar per gig, easily. As for your open free RAM, I recommend having that number. So it'll be 10 plus 8, so it'll be 18 people, and I shouldn't have any problems. I recommend turning these last two options off, and 25 meters is plenty distance. If you can see out beyond there, like how far that is. 25 is a far way to still show people. Or you could just turn this off and just run the 18. But if someone's like way on the other side of the map and they got an avatar that you've already shown that's 200 megabytes, you might start lagging out. So this is just what I would recommend for this specific system. If your RAM is, I'll put the calculation on the screen so you guys can go back and reference that later for your own system. OSC, if you have like face tracking or anything that's like coming in from outside the game, turn that on. Next thing, all right. Graphics. So this is what I set my settings to. You don't have to run your settings like this. This is just what I have found to give me the most performance and best visual quality. I don't bother changing the top because as soon as you start changing things underneath, it just becomes custom anyway. So anti-aliasing ×2. I still agree with what I said earlier that there's noticeable aliasing without anti-aliasing. Unlimited, I would prefer to have my mirrors be very clear. Shadows, if you really care about shadows, feel free to turn this up. It doesn't do that much. Like right now I'm running at like 80 FPS. But if I go to high on that, I just drop down to 70, and there's not even anyone else in here. But for me personally, I don't think it's worth the 10 FPS drop, like right off the bat without having anyone loaded. I don't typically find myself, oh, look, a shadow. Like, who does that? If you're running a higher end rig, go for it. But especially if you're trying to get the most performance out of your rig, just trust me on this one. Next thing, the particle physics quality. It doesn't really affect particles in the world or anything. It just lowers your FPS, especially in big worlds with a lot of people. I noticed when I just turned this on. If you do nothing else, at least turn this on. Basically, I've seen my FPS go from 34 to 56 in a world that had 80 people in it. Being able to go quickly into your menu and go to culling is nice, just to be able to be like, okay, I want to show less people. That is perfectly fine to do on the fly. One thing I will say, if you've already loaded everybody, like, and like you're like, oh, I'm stuttering, like, it's not gonna fix your problem because they're already in your RAM. So what you need to do is turn your culling down and then rejoin the lobby. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you how to do that now. So if you need to rejoin the lobby, you just go to Worlds, you click on your current world, and hit Rejoin. Another thing in the menu that I'd recommend, chat box features, visibility, I would change that to everyone. Another thing, if you're having your issues with your tracker, just like sending your body off into the middle of nowhere, which no one likes, just set that to lock head, pretty simple. I recommend unchecking logging because there's literally no reason to have it on because who's checking logs? And then just pin your FPS so you can see it up here. When you open up your FPS menu, there is a dip in your frame rate. Audio and voice. Here's all your stuff for audio and voice. Earmuff mode, great little tool here. You can toggle it here, but never bother using that. Just double click this button and you can go into your audio settings to change the distance and all that stuff. But for me personally, like if I'm not like in this circle with somebody, like whatever. But yeah, that's the easy way to turn it on and off. Just double click that. Anyway. Moving on, mirrors. Nothing really in here. I can show you how I calibrate my mirror. So my mirror looks like this. Personal mirror settings. Masking, I just do remote players. So I'll show you how to get there again because I kind of clicked through that without looking at it directly because down here it's still in my field of view, but it's not for you guys. All right, so the way I set up my mirror, just the way I like it so I can see everyone around me and everything, is I go to personal mirror, settings, masking, just have remote players on. If you turn on the environment, that will tank your FPS. If you turn on UI, it won't really do much other than just show you the UI in the picture, which personally, I don't want to see it. I turn off the border and I turn on immersive mode. And I also turn the settings to like about 50% opacity, just so I can see through it so I'm not like, blindsided by someone coming at me. if I have my mirror up, which I do all the time. Controls, you can change things here. Personally, for controls, I really, really like using my thumbstick clicks as gesture toggles so that when I'm talking, I can toggle my gestures on and off just by clicking that. So once I get my thing where I want it, I can toggle it, and then I can have my hands free again. If you're on Quest, that's going to lock your hands in whatever position that was in. But if you're on Index, it'll give you the freedom to move around still without having to hold it down to keep a face on if if you don't want to make faces at people. Continuing on, tracking an IK. Great little thing here for you full body users. Freeze tracking on disconnect. So if you're like laying down and you're like, okay, I just want to put a fucking blanket on and chillax for the rest of the night, and I'm not going to be leaving this world, just throw the blanket on, check this box, and your tracking will stay exactly where it is when it dies. Yet again, clear your caches, guys, clear your caches. All right, comfort and safety. So off. No one wants comfort. We just want to play the game. Streamer mode, all that stuff. Allow untrusted URLs. That's the only one I'd recommend having checked here. And you can change your home region here. And for this stuff, just don't touch this. As you can see here, like I'm looking this way and I'm getting almost the same FPS while recording as my old 3080 now. But there's one more thing we have to do. And, well, you don't have to do this, but I would recommend it. It's going to be in your Steam settings. So you go to Steam. Go to launch options for VRChat, which basically just right-click VRChat, hit properties, and put this in. As long as you're running a semi-decent processor, I saw about a 13% improvement in frame rate by running this. I will post it up on the screen and in the description below, so you guys can copy that, just get it and not have to worry about it, and you just put it in. If you notice an FPS increase, cool. If things are stuttery as shit, don't use it. Anyway, let me turn this on. There we go. Me and my semi-full body. Let's go. But even with the mirror in here, still getting about 100 FPS on a 4060. As for some of the most popular worlds out there, granted, I am running a pretty beefy CPU. That is a 13600K. And I have done some overclocking to it. If you're running Intel, by the way, any of these process priorities or overclocking, obviously, I'm not in charge of your computer. If you brick it, that's your fault, not mine. But I did notice a significant improvement in CPU frame times if you overclock the cache. So, like, if you go into BIOS and you go down to the cache, on Intel, check your CPU spec for the cache speed and try to set it as high up as you can. Even if you have to cut your core clock down a little bit, it still makes it better. It's absolutely incredible. When I overclock the cache speed, I'm from testing that I've done, I've gotten within 20% on a 13600K of the 7800X3D, which is, I believe, another $100, $150 more of a CPU, and I'm almost there. But if you're comfortable with overclocking and you haven't checked out the cache yet, for VRChat specifically, I have noticed significant improvements in frame times for VR for the CPU. Now, I will say it's a little wonky at this level here, but that's because I'm not running. I'm running this unthrottled. So if you want to do that, yeah, see, 3.8, steady as a rock. Turn my head a lot, steady as a rock. Turn around, steady. Okay, a little unsteady because that's why I don't. That's why I prefer to set my throttling to fixed, because that stutter there runs fine at 120. You turn, you're all of a sudden having that weird little lag spike while it switches from 120 to 60. For me personally, those stutters are more noticeable when I see the mirror and I'm going up and down, are worse than just running it fixed. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. So in Steam VR here, we go to settings. You go to per application video settings here. This is for Index users only, but if you come down here and you can see throttling behavior, auto to fixed, change that to fixed. and then you can change that to wherever you'd like it. Personally, I've recently just been pushing as hard as I can to 120, just because I've been testing so many things, so I'll just go back to that. And 92 FPS. Did I mention I'm rendering, what is the total per eye here? 2468 by 2740 per eye. That's like 5K by 2.5K on a 4060, and I'm getting 100 FPS. Granted, this is a very light world. So let's go to another world. At least by yourself. And this is still rendering at 5K per eye. On lower end rigs like this, I wouldn't recommend doing this to your computer. Just go back and just change your render resolution back down to 100% and lag out while you do so. As for Quest, there's a couple things you can do. If you're running AirLink, as I said before in my last video, you can go to C Drive, Program Files, Oculus, Support, Oculus Diagnostics, and then the debug tool. The only problem with that one is you have to open it every time with AirLink or the link cable. Just right down here, just tab, like when the program opens, just like right click and pin to taskbar. And then you, instead of going up towards, you know, if you set it to 90, you'll notice most of the time you're at 45. You want to stop that from happening. That's basically the easiest way to do it for those two connection methods. Steam Link, I can't figure out for the life of me why it won't allow me to turn off synchronous space warp. As for the other methods to get your FPS to stay higher, and honestly, it's better to keep it higher with Oculus. The virtual desktop, I still like stand by them. You just hit the left Oculus controller twice once you're in Steam VR, or even before. Just get to that side menu. It'll be over here on your desktop. You go to streaming, it'll be about there, and then you go on the upper left side, it'll be over here. It'll say synchronous space warp and turn it from auto to disabled. And that should basically keep you from capping at 45. It will, however, increase your GPU temps. I have a video on decreasing your GPU temps if you would like to look into that, or you can look up any undervolting guide. Just be careful. When you're running this game and you start running out of RAM or VRAM or whatever, it doesn't go away. So you'd have to set your culling lower and then rejoin the world, because your RAM doesn't actually clean out until you come back and you start the world fresh. So if you're stuttering a lot on Quest, lower that. If you're stuttering out on PC, same thing, lower it, rejoin, because it will help save RAM. If you want to save more RAM, you can check out my Windows optimization guide, which I will post down below with the launch options. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and hope this gets you some serious FPS. Peace.